Hello, good afternoon. Welcome to this Indigenous Teachings Learning Circle hosted by the Ontario Network of CAPC and CPNP Projects. My name is Sydney Bell. I'm the network program lead, and I'm really delighted to welcome you all who are here in person, those of you who are maybe watching the recording, and I'm just really glad to have you here, and I'll be introducing our guest in just a moment. But I would like to, before I do that, just take a moment to invite us to pause and to offer my gratitude for the opportunity for us to learn together and reflect on how we can strengthen our work with Indigenous families and communities. The network sponsor agency, Camino Wellbeing and Mental Health, is located in Kitchener, Ontario. And I'd like to just take a moment to acknowledge that that is the traditional lands of the Haudenosaunee, the Anishinaabe, and Neutral peoples, and this land is a part of the Haldeman Tract along the Grand River. And with that, I would like to introduce our speaker, Brenda Jacobs. Brenda is the cultural capacity trainer at the Hamilton Regional Indian Center. And I'm really delighted to welcome Brenda here. And we're happy to spend some time with you, Brenda. And hello and welcome. Over to you.
All right. Yeah. So I'll do my introduction. Let's say go se wo guego, niago da se don young yats. Ganyak haga ni wo go and joda, o gwali ni we geet the loda. Um very important, and it feels really good for me to say those words because that's who I am. So one of the first word was my real name. So my real name is Niago Dasedu, and it means she's hiding.
Mm.
Our identity and who we are has been impacted by colonization and residential school and genocidal policies. So that's part of who we are is to have that language and all these different pieces of our culture. And and so I didn't grow up in language. My dad, he went to the day schools, and so wasn't allowed to speak language there. My grandmother went to the residential school in Brantford, the Mohawk Institute, so didn't wasn't able to teach her children, my mom, the language and pieces of the culture, even though she was fluent um, at one time. And then so those impacts, and so I didn't really learn about my name or language or the importance of language till I was older. I was like in my 40s when that was happening, and wanted my name really bad. So 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 I was able to dream about it, the meaning of the name, and then get it translated. So it means she's hiding, and fitting because I was shy when I was little, and that's probably also related to probably some fear and how I grew up, and those impacts on our parenting, with residential school and day school. My parents were angry. And so it was I had to do a lot of work to make changes, and wanted to feel better, badly, and I was determined. So had to do lots of work. So here at the Friendship Center in Hamilton, I do cultural capacity training. So that's to educate on the impacts of colonization and residential school. So that's a beginning. This piece here really is is maybe a next step thing, but everybody needs to know those impacts because that's the truth. That's the history that wasn't taught, and so that's important also when working with Indigenous families, and so glad to be here. With all of those changes that were made, I bring in these pieces of myself that I gained from those changes and into what I do. And so it's all like fitting and all meant to be how it's supposed to be. Um, so I'm um so Haudenosaunee means longhouse people. So I go to longhouse. I'm a traditional longhouse person, and so follow ceremonies throughout the year and what's happening in nature. Um, Nature's, a big part of the culture, and but we're all connected, right? We're all connected to creation. And so that's going to be part of this today, part of today, and the teachings. And so I'm glad you're all here. Maybe we could just go around and let me know where you are and what you is everybody in CPNP or CAPC that's here? Yeah, maybe just let me know where you are. Yeah.
We're
Okay, so
CAPC and Renfrew.
okay.
We're in Halliburton County.
We have both.
Sorry, go ahead.
We have both CAPC, CPNP, and I'm in Muskoka.
I'm in Durham Region, CPNP.
From Toronto, I'm from CAPC.
And I'm from Guelph.
There's some folks posting in the chat too, Brenda.
Yeah, I saw Toronto.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
And Aylmer, Nettie's from Aylmer.
Nice.
Perth
Right.
County.
Does everyone have some Indigenous people that they're working with? Yeah, everybody. All right. Okay, so let's get into it. And so I'm gonna share my screen. Okay, so we're gonna begin with the parenting and how it's been. So this is what we had before contact. And so when we're looking at like pregnancy and these different pieces, first we see children as gifts from the Creator. And so when babies are born, they're still closest to Creator. And even the teachings in pregnancy before they come here, some are coincidences maybe, and maybe they're not. Maybe it's a part of somebody's growing if a pregnancy like ends or if the baby is stillborn. So there's things related to death in that way because women are pregnant, they're considered to be like on the fence. Like they can go, they can pass away at any time also. So they're considered to be
Is it
just
just
on the
me that
fence there.
lost audio?
And
I can hear well.
yeah, okay. Okay, so with the women being, on the fence and the teachings prior to that, one of them has to do with the men. And so that is, going through all those changes hormonally, physically. So they talk about the men being like pillows to like absorbed and more or less they don't explain it this way, but it's more where stress isn't added. to the pregnancy because when there's a lot of stress, then the babies are pickling in the cortisol, and that can interfere with brain development. So those things aren't talked about, but we already knew that it. So when I was working with ladies, I'm an Indigenous midwife. So I went to the birthing. I did my training at the birthing center here at Six Nations, and a lot of these teachings from the grandparent, they had a grand would come in and teach us. So the many teachings, and so then the besides the so in the prenatal, I'm just kind of trying to get back to being at the birthing center and working with the women, then knowing the men are to be like pillows. I would also talk about how the women were in control of our feelings and what's coming out of our mouth. And so that's how we can when we can do that, then we're not adding stress to the baby. And so with the babies being able to go back, at any time through the pregnancy or after they're born, these are the kinds of things that can be kept in mind. How is that relationship? How is that relationship in pregnancy? Because we know that abuse increases in pregnancy. And so the baby's watching. I have a little thing here. So the baby's learning even before, or maybe it's not part of this one. Oh, it's not either. Okay. So the baby's, it's in my other thing. So the baby's learning even before they're born because they're hearing what the mom is feeling, what she's saying, and about the baby, and so then they're hearing what dad is feeling and saying about baby, and then they're hearing what's going on between mom and baby, and so we're already teaching them about relationship even before they're here. So if we can be aware of that, because the I think so the goal is to have a healthy pregnancy. And so there's a lot of pieces to that. It's what we eat, it's what we're feeling, it's how what our beliefs are, or what's going to get us through that pregnancy. And so one of them can be the those feelings and how we're viewing. Then there's the things where it comes to physical parts of how many are aware of like a medicine wheel, like a circle divided in four quadrants. Part of that medicine wheel is related to well, all of it can be related to pregnancy and how to have a healthy pregnancy. And so with that, with the traditional way, and what we get talked about is to help the baby come when it's time to be born. And so to not go up the stairs, not stop when you're going upstairs. That's a teaching, because then you might be teaching the baby to up or downstairs, up or down the stairs. Then maybe you're teaching the baby to, stop on their way, when the labor starts and when birth starts. That's one of the teachings. Not stand in the doorway, that's another one. So people who know these things, they'll say, don't stand in the doorway, and they'll kind of make you go through the doorway, so that you're not standing there and teaching the baby that to not stop. And so another one is about the maybe eating strawberries. They say not to eat too many strawberries. Some say don't eat strawberries, but I think maybe, sometimes we need that nutrition, right? That nutrition, but to not eat too many, because there are the strawberry birthmarks. And so it's kind of related to that. The real red marks that somebody might have on their body. a strawberry mark there that's related to that. They can talk about the necklaces that we might wear. Like, don't wear necklaces because that can be related to the umbilical cord being around the neck. That can be a normal thing. It's how tight it is, it's how short it is. Because that's the first thing that we're checking when the baby is born, you know, and to cut and clamp that cord if it is around there to unravel it first and then cut and cord. But if it's too short, they're gonna have to do it right there. And rather than wait till baby is out. So that could be related, you know, wearing necklaces, that kind of thing. Let me see what else. Pregnancy. When you find out you're pregnant, that so the dads are considered to be pregnant also. So to avoid all those things that might affect the waters, they say, you know, keep the waters clean means, what do you think that means? Any ideas? To keep the waters clean?
Like the birthing water, the amniotic fluid.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
maybe.
so what would your idea be on keeping the waters clean? Keeping that amniotic fluid clean. Yeah.
Or
What would
what
you,
you what you take in your body.
yeah. Yeah.
Let's see. No pollutants page is saying
Yeah, no
alcohol or
pollutants.
drugs.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's what they say is keep the waters clean because, you know, avoiding alcohol, you know, that's gonna then you're not gonna have the be on the spectrum, right, of the FASD. And so that's gonna avoid that, you know, and you know,
Dawn
complications
Michelle
that
says no hunting in the chat too.
Mhm.
Just yeah. Sorry about that. Yeah.
Yeah, no hunting. That's because um that that blood that you're seeing, then when the mother sees it, then it can affect them, you know, or fear, you know, those kinds of things. So that's one of them too. Yeah, no hunting. Um, fear, don't they talk about fear and don't watch scary movies because maybe it will affect, you know, scare the mom and then the baby's feeling that. So that's part of it. Keeping the water, just back to keeping the waters clean. So no drugs, no, and you know, because there's many complications that can come with that also. Um, when you're first find out that you're pregnant, then you're supposed to have a boy name and a girl name, and so that it's ready, and a language name, right? Ongwehoe means first people, so that's I say Ongwehoe name or language name, same idea. Name in language, because to have English names, that's assimilation, that's those impacts of colonization, residential school, and those genocidal policies. Because if you look up the Gradual Civilization Act, I think that's the one, you'll see that it was you had to have a English surname and amongst other things. So forcing you to use English. And so our way, right, is what we already had prior to contact. And that is to have our language name and our Ongwehoe name or Indian name. We'll say that amongst ourselves, but um it you know that's a good way of explaining it also, because that's who we are when it comes to those Ongwehoe names. And so part of our identity, right, the identity piece is really important. So these things that we had all were who we were, right? We needed those names. And so for Haudenosaunee Six Nations, those names they can come from the clan mothers or the mother. They say the women hold the names. but I think there are men who probably maybe they dream, and it might come to them too. But to go to the clan mothers and speak with them about your child, and sometimes they'll come up with the name. And but I've dreamt about my youngest daughter's name, and I've seen the picture in my mind of my oldest, and other these thoughts come there about, what a couple of my grandchildren dreamt about my oldest granddaughter's name. So I dream about names. And somebody was sent to me, and I dreamt about their name. So that's who we are. That's part of our identity. And so many or more are coming back to that, to have their Uncle Hoey names. And very important is to return to our own ways. And so 2 times a year they're announced at Longhouse, our names, um and the boys are sung to at Longhouse, and the girls are usually held by the mums. If they're little, you can still get a name. If you weren't born with one, you can get it at an older age. And so they're announced at that time, two times a year in the winter, midwinter. So that's kind of our first ceremony, the midwinters, and then in the fall at our harvest ceremony, the names can be announced there. So special time, and then honoring the children also, where the children lead the dances. They're the singers, the boys, those young boys, probably 10 or less than 10 even, even those ages, they learn songs and they can lead it. And so it's the children who and the youth, some of the youth that will go up there, and they're the singers and the dancers. So it's a awesome thing to see, because they're going to continue carrying through those ceremonies and the parts of our culture that make us who we are. So very important is our children. They're our future. They're probably the most important because they're our future. The ceremonies, introduction after the baby is born. There's a speech for that. And so it's introducing them to all of creation. And so that's anything you see out the window. That's what you're breathing in, right? That's all of creation. That greenery, what does the greenery produce for us? Any
What does
idea?
the greenery produce for us?
Yeah. How are we connected to the greenery?
Do you mean like food medicine is something, food and medicine, Dawn
Yeah.
suggested, and
Mm-hmm.
oxygen?
Oxygen, right?
Sorry.
Everybody is connected to the greenery. Yeah, everybody is connected to creation. The food where are we getting our food from? Mother Earth,
Mhm.
right? So we're connected to Mother Earth. Everybody is connected to Mother Earth. It's in our creation story also. So I'm going to come to that. But
Brenda, there were a couple of questions.
sure. Yeah, I can
Yvette
see them.
asked about traditional tobacco is sacred. How is it viewed in pregnancy?
I think it can be used to help you through birth. It can be used to help you with any. So when, say you needed, so there's medicines, like say for gestational diabetes and pregnancy. So when that medicine person prepares those medicines, they'll burn tobacco for it. So hopefully you have your name. They'll ask you if you have a name, and they'll use it when that medicine is being prepared, because they say when you have your name, then it knows who it's going to work for. So with that tobacco, those words go up to Creator with that burning of tobacco, or even placing it down on the earth, and asking for what you want. What so that's relationship. That's relationship, even with those things. So that's where that can fit in, that tobacco. Yeah.
Thank you. And then Don Michelle asked, when you were talking about, naming, what if you don't know your language or are not in a longhouse because you don't have a clan?
Mm.
Do you have any
Um,
thoughts on that?
yeah, even for Haudenosaunee, they say you can still have a name. Um, and for me, I heard an elder speak. He was on Anishinaabe, and me and my youngest daughter's father, we went to a naming ceremony in Magnetowan, and I heard that elder speak on how to get it, and it was about dreaming for it, and so when I heard that, I said, I'm doing that. And that's how my name came. And so on that third night it came. And if you want to know the process, Don, I'll share it with you separately. And so with these when that's how big the spiritual part is, because when I got my name, that's between me and Creator. I didn't have, a clan mother. I mean, there is no clan mother in position right now. But I wasn't given my name when I was born. I was like 40s. And so, or 30s, yeah. Late 30s, yeah, somewhere in there. So this is how I got my name. And that's how I dream about others' names. And or any other answers I want. So it, um, at Six Nations, yeah, they say you don't need a name, but, um, that's there. And I'm just thinking on other things that go with that. But they say to have your name, because then it's more, the medicine knows, Creator knows who you are, but you can still get a name even though you don't have a clan. So it's because if your mother is non-native, and you're Haudenosaunee, then you don't have a clan or nation. You might have native blood if your dad is native, but you don't have a clan or nation, because that's where that follows your mother's line, matrilineal. So my grandmother, my mom, my grandmother, and so on, they were Mohawk Bears, and so for Anishinaabe, they follow their dad's side, or their clan and nation. Yeah, so there still may be in native blood, but sometimes there's no clan or nation. That status card, the only nation of people that tells you who you are, by somebody else. So when people say I'm Lower Mohawk, there is no Lower Mohawk. So these are some of the other pieces that go with learning about Haudenosaunee people, rather than just teachings. Yeah. So then I hope that answers your question. Maybe more will come to me about that too. Um, and then pregnancy, you're not supposed to touch medicines, because you can lessen its power, and you can also make it more powerful, because we have a youth and elders gathering coming up next week. And Tom Porter, if you read his book called And Grandmother Said, he was raised by his grandmother, and she taught him a lot of what he knows, right? So he talks about, knowing that when his wife was pregnant, he was pregnant too. So going into his grandmother's house and looking at her medicine, she said, "Oh no, you're ruining the medicine." But then she did it the opposite and said, knowing that they're powerful at that time, the men and women in pregnancy, that she had him stick his finger in that medicine and make it more powerful. So it can be the other way too, when it comes to that kind of thing. And so that was good to hear. But there is that teaching on the medicine that women on their moon time aren't to look at somebody's medicine or touch it. And people drinking alcohol aren't supposed to do that either. So there's teachings about that and what to do and what not to do with medicines. Um, and that's a little bit of that. So I think that covers everything with the names, the introduction speech. So it's not just to your all of creation, it's to your clan family, your aunts and uncles, whoever was there at the birth, and so the births were normally at home. We kind of uh talked a little bit on that this morning. And so that was interfered with also, right, by the health system. The doctors, they want to sit comfortably rather than how things happen at home, right? With the midwives having to go with how the woman feels she needs to birth. It could be standing up, it could be sitting on the stool, it could be laying on the bed, on their side on all fours, those kinds of things. And so birthing at home has been also impacted, but coming back a lot now because of when things happened um, prior to contact, there's all these other different things that come into play spiritually, the medicines that can help. So many medicines through the pregnancy. But then, always today, always watching for any issues and getting a consult, right, if needed, and getting them checked out. Okay. So then under the husk is the puberty time. And so they're still innocent, they need protection, so under the husk. And so they say when the boys, when their voice starts to crack, then they're to go with the dads and the other men to learn about their roles and responsibilities. And then the girls, they'll go, they'll be with the women and the learning about their responsibilities, not eating berries for Anishinaabe people, culture, and a berry fast. And so then when they're done that year of not having berries, then they'll give berries to the community because that's what they've learned is how to look after community with those teachings from the other women. And so many, teachings could be about preparing the nest. Like when at that time, then you're supposed to go on some medicine to help clean you out. There's like a clean out medicine for the uterus. It's like preparing the nest, they say. And so also there's supposed to be 3 years between pregnancies to let the nest heal. And so that's also there. Um, for the youth, they might go be put out on the land to connect with the earth and all of creation, and maybe they'll learn about their responsibility. Maybe they're singers. Maybe the boy is a singer. Maybe the girl is can cook good or can sew or has some kind of gift that will help them. So those teachings are there. And when I say that the babies can go back at any time, that we don't know for sure what the reason would be. So, but I think maybe sometimes, even the SIDS fits in there, the sudden infant death syndrome, because there's just there's some because the children are here also to teach us, in different various stages. And so even, to be born stillborn is not only a gift, but there's teachings with that. And it could be on relationship. What were they? The baby didn't want to come. The baby didn't want to come, and be born alive. What was happening. Maybe we don't think of these things at the time, but birth and death are so similar, right? That we also have to know about death, because it's just the opposite. That same glazed eyes look in someone who is close to dying is also there in the woman's eyes. I saw that. It's also when the baby hasn't quite come into their body yet, the spirit. Their eyes aren't quite clear. And so that's part of it also. So many different things, whether it's comfortable or not, death has become uncomfortable and a hard thing, but really it's a ceremony also. So that's why they say pregnant women are sitting on the fence. And so the corn. Okay, so the corn. So the corn, we have our traditional white corn, and here's our white corn. This one, this kind is can even grow like up to a foot long. So this is a special corn because it shows it's part of a corn that I picked, but it didn't grow to its fullest potential. And so and this is what it looked like. So when I saw it, so we were having light corn. Our traditional way of eating our corn is to lye it. It's a process using hardwood ashes to make the kernel, the shell of the kernel, coating of the kernel to get soft and like fall apart so that it becomes edible. It has to go through this process. So when I saw this corn, I had taken a group of women because they wanted to know where to pick it. Where can we pick it? They said, because it was fall time. And so this piece here on the very end was sticking out. And so it caught my attention. And when I opened it up, this is what it looked like. So so when I first saw it, I thought, this is the baby. This is the umbilical cord right here. And this is the mom. Because I had learned that the corn, when it gets dried and when you're shucking it, that when one of those kernels like flies off, we're to gather that kernel because we're not supposed to leave our women behind. And so that stayed in my mind. And so this corn is about the women, because we're going to when women are born, we're going to carry all the seeds that we're going to have for our whole lifetime. And so that's what each one of these kernels are, a seed. So when they dry and we plant in June usually after our around May 24, and when the earth has warmed up, then we're having our planting ceremony. And so we'll take three kernels of corn, and it'll 3 to 5, they say, and put them in a mound, and then they'll grow. And so there, each one of these kernels on this cob is a seed. And um, teachings with that. And then when I later on, as I looked at this corn, so I have it here. That's what this piece is. And here's the end piece. So it used to be joined like that. And I was having a corn husk doll workshop and it fell off because there's not much holding it on there. So it became dry and fell off as I was carrying it. I was kind of sad. But it was going to anyway, I think, because there's just not much holding it there. And so where was I going with that? Oh, relating it to our parenting. So yeah, later on I thought this fits in with how our parenting has been interrupted because it didn't grow to its fullest potential, which would be, a solid piece of corn and almost a foot long. Has 8 rows of corn. It has 8 rows, and we have ceremony for it. Our small green corn ceremony. And so yeah, as I said, nature is teaching us. So I use it as a teaching tool when I go into the different programs that I might co-program with here at the center. And so very these pieces of our culture is what our community wants to learn. And especially after the 215 grave sites, how many are aware of that? Were found in 2021, I believe, and letting Canada and the rest of Canadians know what we already knew because our relatives were telling us, the children were telling what had been happening at the residential institutes. And so we already knew, but it made that awareness grow or for the first time, even maybe, what was happening at these residential schools. Sometimes I'll say institute more because one of the survivors said it wasn't a school. It was an institute. So that made sense to me, especially with, knowing my grandmother went there and she didn't talk about her experience until 3 years before she died, so hung on it a long time and didn't share. And then, confirming the finding of these grave sites because she witnessed somebody being buried as she looked out the window. So I talk about that in my training. And so if we even come back to this word, Aguachile, it means my family. There's a part of this word that means fire. And so how we lived in our longhouses long time ago was each clan lived around a fire in the longhouse. And so our support system built right in how we lived. The aunties were there, the people, our elders were there, and all that, passing along the knowledge in the language. And so this is how we lived and um, we're able to, probably have a healthier life because we didn't have the foods that we had today. We had the white corn, we lived off game was hunted and that kind of thing. So lots of different pieces that fit in with who we are. Okay, so if we go on to let me see what else I got here. Our creation story even is related to just some teachings, I guess, about relationship also. This is the Haudenosaunee creation story, part of like a depiction. This is my uncle's artwork a depiction, his depiction of a part of the creation story. You know, look, it involves water. Oh, I touched. It involves water. You know, it involves so it begins in spirit world, and there's a pregnant lady and a tree of life, and there's a hole at the bottom of that tree of life. There's a couple of variations on whether she was pushed or fell through that hole, but on her way through that hole in that darkness, she grabbed some items from that tree of life. The corn, beans, and squash is our traditional food. She grabbed that, some strawberry plants, some tobacco plants, and was falling through the darkness. And then the geese, they saw her falling, so they went over to investigate and see what was happening, and they said, "How are we going to help her?" And then they figured, "Let's help her with our wings." And so that's what they did. And then the turtle, it raised its shell out of the water and said, "Put her on my back." And so that's where they put her. For water animals, the beaver, the otter, the muskrat, and the loon, they knew she needed that soil from the bottom of the water, and so it was put on the turtle's back, and she danced on the soil in a counterclockwise direction, and slowly it got larger and larger. And so then it was called Turtle Island. And so, you know, then after colonization, then it was called like North America. And so that's the sacredness. That's the sacredness that we see to the land, because then another part of the creation story is the four colors of man were created. After all of creation, the humans were created last. And so the Red Nation was created from the earth, and their responsibility was earth. The White Nation was created from the foam of the salt water, and their responsibility was water. The Yellow Nation was created from the inner bark of the tree, and their responsibility was air. And the Black Nation was created from the outer bark of the tree, and their responsibility was fire. And so all given, all equal, and how they were created. Creator blew three breaths into each doll for their heart, their mind, and their spirit, and they blinked their eyes and came to life. And so to enjoy all of creation, and considered equal, right? Because of those three breaths, they were considered equal. And with the responsibilities that were given, we've lost, um connection to our responsibilities and connection to this earth. And so today we have climate change. And so with the lady being pregnant, we're considered to be like the earth when we're pregnant, because the babies are born in the amniotic sac with that water. It's for protection. It's also, has nutrients and waste, and it also with the placenta. If you hold the placenta up, how many have seen their placenta? Anybody or somebody's? No? And so if you held that up, it connects to the mom, right? It connects to the mom, the uterus. And so if you hold that placenta up by the umbilical cord, you'll see that there's those veins and arteries going into that placenta. And so they say that's like the trees that are rooted in the earth. And so it just made me feel like really I don't even know the word, that it was a special thing, like to see things like that. And that's how it is. Like even if when we're born and we grow up and given all those good things, we're connected to the earth. We're connected. We're grounded in the earth. All humans are grounded into the earth. All humans are bundles when they're born. They're wrapped. No matter what color you are, you're wrapped when you're born. In the um, and so we're all connected. And so um, the placenta, plays a big role. So then in the postnatal time, so at the birthing center, those placentas would be sent home with the family. And usually it was his responsibility to look after that. So when we say look after it, it's like having ceremony for it because it played that special role in holding our baby. And they're supposed to bury it and give it back to the earth, to dig that hole and, to honor it and speak to it and use that tobacco, right? Our original tobacco, but which is different from cigarette tobacco. And make a little fire after you've buried it, and to honor it that way and thank it, and so that other fires kind of disguises any scent or covers any scent there, so the dogs won't dig it up or anything like that. And so that placenta is honored that way. And the other part, if I go back to the pregnancy, is that our babies are supposed to be the first words they hear should be language, and that will help them, later on. So that's what we used to have, and so that's being done more. And even if you can't, even if you don't know language or know somebody who can do that, I was at a birth where the lady had somebody read our Thanksgiving address. I don't know if it's part of this one or not. Yeah, there it is. And so these are all the parts of creation that we might do. Some of them have ceremonies throughout the year. And so when we do it's called the Thanksgiving address. It's an acknowledgement of all of these pieces of creation for what they do for us, because they have roles and they have a responsibility to help us. And so in this birth, the lady had somebody read it in English. And when she was done, the baby like made a sigh. The baby just went like that. And that was pretty amazing to see that, that they were introduced, okay, yes, in English, but it's like they already understood what was being said to them. So it was amazing. So got to see really amazing things, right? Women using their power and having the birth without no no pain meds, a natural way, because our bodies produce endorphins, right? And morphine to help with that. There's also medicines to help with pain through that too. So yeah, this is an important part of our culture also, this Thanksgiving address. What else we got? We kind of talked about that in stages of life. Um,
I do have a question, Brenda,
sure.
that Don Michelle posted, uh, saying, I have heard of binding belly and or binding around the wrist. Do you know about that, or could you share your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so the binding happens for the mom and the baby. So for the mom to help with strengthening stomach muscles and helping the uterus go back to, because at 6 weeks, then the uterus goes back to its normal size. Um, And so just helping support that way. For the babies, it's around the belly and belly button to help also with support of them. And that's kind of all they explain with that. But it's more for the babies, it's to wrap them after they're born, like so that it's not only to because they've been inside like all all scrunched up for 9 months, and then when they come here they're sometimes they're like this.
Mm-hmm.
And um it's almost like exposing them to everything, and so to keep them they don't explain it this way either, but to keep them, still comforted, we're to wrap them. We have the moss bags, we had cradle boards, and that's the idea also, was still keep them comforted and secure, and until they can get out themselves. They'll eventually learn to get out themselves, right? And because they're moving around that much. And so with that cradle board, I think it's the girl. I always get it mixed up. I probably need to hear it again. But when they're in the cradle board and the mom's carrying them, I think the girls are facing backwards and the boys face frontwards, because they're really there when they become a man. The men are usually walking behind. They usually walked behind to watch everybody's back, and how they moved around long time ago. This is parenting pre-contact, so that's what was happening. And so it helps them learn when they're in the cradle board, it helps them learn like discipline. They're watching, they're learning, right? They're listening, they're using their senses more. And so I've also watched a couple of families use this board, and they were and then when the kids got to be like walking, they held on their parents' hand and were looking up at them, like focusing and listening, and they were also talking language. The parents were second language learners, so they were learning language as a first language learner. So they were a fluent family. They became fluent even before the baby was born. So
Wow.
so pretty amazing to watch.
Yeah,
That's
definitely.
that stood out. Yeah.
We have another question from Don Michelle, and then probably time to wrap up.
Mhm.
Don Michelle says, I was told to tie a piece of leather around
Oh,
baby's
yeah.
wrist and parents bind them to the earth and not to take them to funerals. Is that true?
The leather is for that time when the relative has passed. So it's just that leather is tied on their left hand because that's closest to their heart. And helps them stay here because they say their passing relative can maybe take them with them. Sometimes like things can happen, but it helps them ground. Yes, helps them stay here. And so yeah, related to that death piece. And what was the other piece? Was there another part there?
Was there, Don Michelle, anything else there that you wanted to hear about?
No, I've heard that around in our community about like if there's a funeral and you're pregnant, like you're supposed to tie leather around mom's belly, and then once baby's born, like mom or dad and baby are to have a leather strap around their wrist. But I didn't know the teaching of it, and I've had people or relatives ask me about it. And I always tell them, I said, I've always heard about it, but I don't really know the teaching behind it. So that's why I was just asking.
Yeah, around the wrist, it's to ground them, keep them here. Same with the hole in a moccasin. That's to keep the
Oh, yeah.
babies. Yeah. And then with the leather around the belly, I don't know that. I've never heard that. And so what we are told at Six Nations is that we're not to go to funerals. We're not to go to funerals when we're pregnant. I mean, it does happen, right? Could be your parent or your child or someone you're close to. They will go, but to avoid it if possible, but doesn't always happen, and then there's medicines to clean off with that, so yeah, that's what I know about that. Yeah. Good question. Good reminder.
Samantha says in the chat that she's heard about using a white cloth to cover the belly if mom is hearing upsetting things to protect the little spirit.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know about that either. Yeah.
Right.
Maybe that's Anishinaabe. I'm not sure, but I don't hear
Mhm.
that around Six Nations but
Well,
yeah,
thank you.
good.
So, Brenda, are there any sort of closing comments you wanted to make?
Um,
Any final thoughts?
Yeah, I guess the positivity always comes in there, right? To that as we're teaching the baby even before they're here, and the water, how important that water is, right? I could go into water also, and the teachings with that, and what I've come across. We did talk about a lot of them. And so one of them is to, talk to, because we're the water. We're like that water, right? If we need that positivity too. And so do our children. And so just think about one thing, I guess, that you can say to yourself or to your child, or your children, no matter what age, positive thing to say to them. Because when there's that Japanese doctor who studied the water crystals, took a picture of it before, that frozen crystal before, and then after it was talked to negatively, and how distorted it can change. And so, same idea for us, right? We need that positivity and we need that water. We can't live without water or creation, but creation can live without us. So, if you think about
Thank you.
the positivity for yourself, and something not only you're going to say to yourself, but something you might say to your child. So do that through your day and every day, right? And because we need to build ourselves up also, as this work is being done, and not just to give our energy, but also to give ourselves good things too, positive things. So thank you for being here and
Thank you.
listening today. Mhm.
That's a beautiful note to end on. I appreciate that. And all of the teachings and wisdom that you've shared with us. Thank you very much, very, very much for your time today. And Brenda, and thank you everybody who has joined us in our learning circle today. It was really great to see your faces and to have some conversation. And I look forward to the next time that we can get together.
Right. Take care.
Thank
See
you.
you later.
Take care. Enjoy the
Yeah.
rest of